What happens when a Hollywood legend known for his stoic silence faces off with one of television's most outspoken personalities? Live on air, with no script, no filter, and millions watching. The result was chaos no one saw coming. But because what you're about to hear is one of the most uncomfortable, explosive moments ever caught on daytime television. And trust me, you'll want to share your thoughts in the comments below once you've seen what unfolded. It was a bright morning at The View. The audience buzzed with excitement. A Hollywood icon was in the building. Harrison Ford, rugged, iconic, carrying decades of cinematic power, stepped onto the stage with that slow, almost reluctant smile. The audience erupted in applause. Joy Behar clapped too, her grin wide and teasing. She was ready for fun. Ford, maybe not so much. As he took his seat, the cameras zoomed in on his face, calm, a little distant. He wasn't one for talk shows, everyone knew that. He'd always said interviews made him feel cornered. Still, he had a new film to promote, and the producers had promised it would be light, respectful. But if there's one thing Joy Behar doesn't do, it's hold back. So, Harrison, Joy began, leaning forward with that spark in her eyes. You've been the tough guy for, 40 years now? Han Solo, Indiana Jones, always serious, never smiling. Tell me, is that just you being you, or do you practice that scowl in the mirror? The audience laughed. Harrison didn't. He smirked faintly, but his eyes narrowed just enough to let you know he didn't like where this was going. I don't practice anything, he said dryly. I just show up and try to tell the truth. The crowd chuckled, but the tone shifted. Joy wasn't done. Oh, come on, lighten up. You know what people say about you, right? That you're kind of a handful on set. Harrison shifted in his chair. A handful, he repeated slowly. You mean I expect people to do their job? Whoopi Goldberg's eyebrows lifted. Sarah Haynes glanced at the producer off camera. The energy was getting heavy fast. Joy laughed again, waving her hand. No, I mean difficult. That's the word people use. You've got a reputation, Harrison. You don't exactly hide that you don't like doing press. Harrison leaned forward slightly, his tone cooling. Maybe that's because I don't like being talked to like a tabloid headline. The laughter died down. Joy's smile flickered. The cameras caught the change, her expression stiffening for just a second before she forced out another laugh. Well, you're here now, so let's not take ourselves too seriously, she said. We're just talking. Sure, Harrison muttered. If that's what you call this. There was a flicker of discomfort across the table. Sunny Hostin tried to jump in with a question about Ford's new movie, but Joy interrupted. No, wait, I'm curious, she said, leaning in. You've been in Hollywood for half a century. You've seen everything. Doesn't it ever bother you that people say you're, well, kind of a grump? A murmur went through the audience. Harrison blinked slowly. Then, in that gravelly voice that could silence a room, he said, You call it grumpy. I call it having boundaries. Joy raised her brows. Boundaries? On live television. Harrison nodded. Exactly. The audience laughed nervously, unsure whether to clap or stay quiet. But Harrison wasn't joking anymore. His jaw was tight, his eyes steady on Joy's. I think people mistake honesty for rudeness, he said. I don't play nice just because there's a camera pointed at me. Joy leaned back, smirking. Well, I don't either. That's why we're both still here, huh? Harrison's lips pressed into a line. Maybe, but one of us should have thought twice before opening their mouth. A louder rolled through the audience. Joy's smirk faltered. The moment stretched, the tension snapping tight between them. Whoopi stepped in quickly, laughing to break the ice. All right. I think we all need a commercial break before this turns into The View. The revenge. The audience laughed, but the laughter sounded nervous, uneven. The cameras cut to commercial. Harrison exhaled, glancing away. Joy folded her arms and stared down at her cue cards, pretending to read, but everyone on set could feel it. Something had shifted. When the cameras came back, the energy would be different. Something was about to erupt, and this time, there would be no cutting to break. When the show returned from its commercial break, the atmosphere in the studio was completely different. The audience could sense it before a single word was spoken. Joy Behar's usual grin was tighter now, and Harrison Ford sat a little farther back in his chair, arms crossed, eyes fixed on the floor. The air between them seemed charged, thick, tense, and heavy. Whoopi Goldberg, ever the moderator, tried to smooth things out. All right, welcome back to The View, everyone, she said, forcing a cheerful tone. We've been talking with the legendary Harrison Ford about his new movie, The Call of Honor. The audience clapped politely, unsure whether they were supposed to. Harrison nodded once, barely. He wasn't hiding his mood. His jaw was still tight from what Joy had said earlier. Joy leaned forward again, determined not to let the awkwardness win. So, Harrison, she said, we were talking during the break, and I was saying, look, you've had this incredible career, decades of blockbusters. But sometimes you seem, I don't know, bothered by fame. I mean, do you even like Hollywood anymore? Harrison looked up slowly. I like the work, he said flatly. Not the noise that comes with it. Joy smiled, tilting her head. So, what? You don't like interviews like this? The audience chuckled. It was meant as a joke. But Ford didn't laugh. No, he said simply. I don't. A ripple of laughter broke out, half amusement, half disbelief. Even Whoopi chuckled, trying to keep things light. But Joy wasn't satisfied. She leaned in further, her tone edged with challenge. Then why come on the show, Harrison? If you don't like interviews, if you don't like talking about yourself, what are you doing here? Ford exhaled through his nose, almost a scoff. He looked up at her with that cold, piercing stare that made even the toughest characters in his films back down. I'm here because people I work with asked me to be, he said. It's part of the job, but I don't have to pretend to enjoy it. The room went still. The audience wasn't sure how to react. Some clapped awkwardly, others stayed silent. Joy gave a little laugh, but it didn't sound natural. Well, she said, you don't have to enjoy it, but you could at least try to smile for the viewers at home. That did it. Harrison leaned forward, eyes sharp. You know what, Joy? Maybe I'm just tired of having to perform when I'm not acting. Maybe I'm tired of people expecting me to dance for them just because I've been in a few movies they liked. The laughter died completely. Whoopi's eyes widened slightly. Sunny Hostin shifted in her seat, suddenly fascinated by her note cards. Joy opened her mouth to reply, but Ford wasn't done. You sit here, he said, his voice calm but rising with restrained anger, and you poke at people, actors, politicians, whoever walks in that door, and you expect them to laugh it off because it's television. But maybe you forget sometimes that these are real people. We've had real lives. We're not here to be your punchlines. The audience gasped. The sound engineer's finger hovered over the mute button. Joy's smirk vanished completely. For the first time in a long while, she looked caught off guard. Her tone shifted, defensive now. Oh, come on, Harrison. This is The View. It's a talk show. We talk. If you can't handle a few tough questions. It's not the questions, Ford interrupted sharply. It's the tone. That silence again. The kind that feels like a drumbeat building before an explosion. Tone, Joy said slowly. You think I was being disrespectful? Ford didn't hesitate. Yes, the crowd murmured. The producers were waving frantically from off stage, trying to signal the hosts to move on. But nobody dared to break the tension. Whoopi finally stepped in, half laughing, half serious. Okay. Let's all breathe for a second. Harrison, Joy, let's keep it friendly. But Harrison turned to Whoopi, his voice soft but firm. I'm being friendly. I'm just answering honestly. Joy folded her arms. Well, maybe next time you should stay home if honesty makes you this uncomfortable. Ford blinked once. Slowly. Then leaned back in his chair. Maybe I should, he said. The crowd reacted. Some gasped, some clapped, others whispered in shock. Whoopi's face tightened, and she tried to cut to another topic, fumbling for control. All right, let's talk about the film, shall we? But Ford's expression said it all. He was done talking about the movie. He was done, period. He took a slow breath, looked across the table one more time, then said quietly, You know, I've been in this business a long time. I've done a lot of interviews. But this, he paused, shaking his head. This is the first time I've ever felt like I needed to walk away. And with that, Harrison Ford reached up, unclipped his microphone, and stood up. The audience erupted in gasps. Joy's eyes widened. Oh, come on, Harrison. Don't be dramatic, she said, forcing a nervous laugh. We're just having a little fun. But he didn't respond. He looked straight at her and said, You call it fun. I call it disrespect. Then he turned and walked off the stage. The studio went dead silent. You could hear his footsteps echoing against the polished floor as he disappeared behind the curtain. Whoopi stared after him, then looked back at Joy, who was frozen in place, her smile completely gone. Well, Whoopi said slowly, that was something. Joy tried to recover, turning to the audience with a half-hearted laugh. Guess I pushed one button too many, she said, but no one laughed. The tension was too thick, too raw. The director's voice came through the earpiece. Cut to break now. Go to break. The red light above the camera dimmed. The music cue started. The segment was over. But backstage, the real scene was still unfolding. Harrison was pacing near the exit door, still fuming, his assistant trailing behind. A producer hurried up to him, trying to smooth things over. "Mr. Ford, please, we can fix this. It just got heated." "She does that with everyone." Harrison stopped and turned, his expression cold. "Then maybe she should stop." The producer froze. Ford shook his head, grabbed his coat from a nearby rack, and muttered, "You can tell them the interview's over." He started walking toward the exit. Inside the studio, Joy was still on her chair, trying to make light of what had happened. But her voice cracked slightly as she spoke. "Well, that's Hollywood for you," she said to the audience. "Some people can save the galaxy, but can't take a joke." Whoopi didn't even smile. She just looked at her, disappointed. "Joy," she said softly, "you might want to think about that one." The tension backstage spilled over. Sonny came over during the break, whispering, "Joy, that was bad. He's really upset." Joy sighed, rolling her eyes. "Oh, please. They'll twist it into drama, it'll trend for a day, and then it's done." But it wasn't. The producers were already on their phones, messages flying, damage control mode activated. Harrison's team refused to let him come back on for a closing segment. The live audience sat whispering, replaying the confrontation in their minds. When the show returned to air, they didn't mention it. They pretended it didn't happen. The rest of the episode was awkward, the humor forced. Joy's usual spark was gone. And as the credits rolled, she sat silently, staring at her mug, lost in thought. Meanwhile, outside the studio, Harrison Ford climbed into his car, slamming the door behind him. Cameras flashed. Reporters were already gathering, sensing something had gone down. He said nothing, just stared out the window as his driver pulled away. The storm had already begun. By the time the show's replay hit social media, clips were everywhere. Twitter, TikTok, YouTube. People sharing the moment he stood up, the way he said, "You call it fun. I call it disrespect." Fans were divided. Some said Joy Behar went too far. Others claimed Ford overreacted. The clip spread like wildfire, and within hours, hashtags were trending. Hashtag Harrison walks out, hashtag Joy Behar drama, hashtag The View Meltdown. But back inside ABC's offices, the producers weren't laughing. They'd never seen a walkout like this, especially not from someone like Harrison Ford. And Joy Behar? For the first time in a long time, she wasn't so sure if her sharp tongue had gone too far. The next morning, the world woke up to a media frenzy. Every entertainment outlet, morning show, and gossip blog was ablaze with one headline. Harrison Ford walks off the View after explosive clash with Joy Behar. Clips from the confrontation flooded the internet. Twitter timelines were filled with short videos of Ford's sharp words, that tense silence, and the moment he unhooked his microphone. On TikTok, users were editing the footage with dramatic music, captions like, "The moment Joy realized she went too far." Even fan pages were posting slowed-down replays, zooming in on Ford's expression, stone-faced, controlled, but burning with something raw. Meanwhile, Joy Behar sat in her dressing room the following morning, scrolling through her phone. Her notifications were chaos, mentions, tags, headlines. Some defended her, but many didn't. One tweet read, "Joy Behar just pushed Harrison Ford too far. She owes him an apology." Another said, "She's a talk show host, not a bully." There's a difference. Joy tossed her phone onto the vanity table and sighed. "They'll move on," she muttered to herself. "They always do." But she knew it wasn't that simple. She'd been on The View for years. She'd seen scandals come and go. But this was different. This wasn't a political guest or a comedian. This was Harrison Ford, a man beloved by millions, someone the public saw as untouchable, even sacred. And she had just made him walk out on live TV. In another part of New York, Harrison sat quietly in his hotel suite. He hadn't spoken to anyone since the show. His publicist had begged him to make a statement, to control the narrative. But Harrison didn't want to. He'd never cared much for controlling narratives. He just wanted respect. His assistant entered the room gently, holding a phone. "They're asking if you want to release something to the press," she said softly. "Just to clarify what happened." Harrison looked out the window for a long time before replying. "No," he said finally. "They saw what happened." That was the thing about Harrison Ford. He didn't explain himself. He didn't chase after validation. But silence, in today's world, only made the fire burn hotter. By noon, talk shows everywhere were debating the incident. On Good Morning America, The hosts discussed whether Joy had gone too far. One said, "She's a comedian, she pushes buttons." Another countered, "But there's a line, and she crossed it." You could see Ford's discomfort. Clips of Whoopi's reaction were dissected too, her raised eyebrow, her attempt to diffuse the situation. People praised her calmness, calling her the voice of reason in a chaotic moment. Back at the View's studio, things were tense. The producers called an emergency meeting. Ratings were up, way up, but the backlash was getting ugly. ABC executives were worried. There were calls from Ford's representatives demanding an on-air apology. When Joy walked in, the room fell quiet. One of the producers cleared his throat. "Joy," he said carefully, "we need to address this. Today's show can't just move on like nothing happened." Joy frowned. "What are you saying? You want me to apologize on air?" "Not necessarily apologize," another producer said, "but maybe acknowledge it. Clarify what you meant. People think you ambushed him." Joy exhaled, sitting down. "I didn't ambush him. He was just being overly sensitive. He's a big boy. He can handle it." But even as she said the words, she didn't sound convinced. Whoopi entered next, her expression calm but heavy. She walked over to Joy and said quietly, "You need to say something. He's not some random celebrity. It's Harrison Ford. People adore him. You can't win this one by doubling down." Joy stared at her co-host, the weight of those words settling in. She hated being told what to do, but she could feel the tide turning against her. When the show went live that day, the tension was visible. The hosts' smiles were forced, their voices slightly stiffer than usual. The audience knew something was off. Halfway through the episode, Whoopi cleared her throat. "Before we move on," she said, glancing at Joy, "we just want to address something that happened yesterday." Joy looked directly at the camera, forcing a smile. "Yeah," she said slowly. "Yesterday got a little heated between me and Harrison Ford. I think everyone saw that." Nervous laughter rippled through the audience. "I want to say," she continued, "I respect Harrison and his career immensely. I was just having a little fun, like I always do. I didn't mean to upset him. If he felt disrespected, that wasn't my intention." The words were polite, but they didn't sound heartfelt. The apology felt like a performance, too measured, too careful. After the show, social media exploded again. Viewers dissected every word, every blink, every tone of her voice. Comments flooded in. "That wasn't an apology. She's just trying to save face. Harrison deserves better." Meanwhile, a quiet clip of Harrison leaving his hotel went viral. Reporters shouted questions. "Will you return to The View? Are you mad at Joy?" But he said nothing. Just that signature Harrison Ford silence. Stoic. Controlled. Later that evening, an exclusive interview aired on Entertainment Tonight. The host read a statement from Harrison's publicist. "Mr. Ford appreciates his fans' support. He has always believed in speaking truthfully, even when it's uncomfortable. He has no further comment." That was it. 7 sentences that said everything without saying much at all. But the internet had already chosen sides. Memes appeared, Joy Behar photoshopped into an Indiana Jones movie poster, labeled Raiders of the Lost Temper. Others showed Harrison walking away from the table with the caption, "When the talk show crosses the line." Even celebrities began chiming in. Chris Pratt tweeted, "You don't mess with Han Solo. Period." Mark Hamill posted a cryptic line. "Never tell Harrison the odds, especially on live TV." The tweet racked up over 1 million likes. By nightfall, Joy Behar was trending for all the wrong reasons. ABC's PR team was in overdrive, trying to calm the storm, but the narrative was out of their hands. Inside her apartment that night, Joy sat alone with a glass of wine, watching the replay on her tablet. Seeing herself laugh, seeing the moment his face hardened, hearing the words, "You call it fun. I call it disrespect." It all hit differently now. She paused the clip right before he stood up. For the first time, she looked uncomfortable. Not angry. Not defiant. Just small. Her phone buzzed. It was a message from Whoopi. "You okay?" Joy typed back, "Yeah. I just didn't think it would blow up like this." A moment later, another message appeared. "It's not the first time, Joy. But maybe this time, it's worth thinking about." Joy didn't reply. She just sat there, staring at the paused frame of Harrison walking away. She had crossed lines before. But this felt different. Across town, Harrison sat in his dimly lit living room, flipping through channels. Everyone seemed to be showing the View moment. He shook his head and turned off the TV. His phone buzzed. It was a text from a friend. You handled yourself with class, man. Harrison stared at the message for a while before replying. I just told the truth. Outside, the city moved on, but online the fire kept spreading. By midnight, the View's YouTube upload of the episode had hit 3 million views. The comments section was a battleground. And somewhere in the middle of it all, both Harrison Ford and Joy Behar were realizing something they hadn't expected. One tense conversation had just become the biggest pop culture moment of the year. The following week, the View's studio felt different. The laughter wasn't as loud. The energy wasn't the same. Even the audience, usually so quick to cheer and clap, seemed hesitant, like they were waiting for another explosion. Joy Behar walked onto the set with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. The makeup artists had done their best to make her look composed, but there was a weariness about her. A crack in the confidence that once defined her every moment on camera. The network had issued its statement, carefully worded, neutral, cold. ABC and The View have great respect for Mr. Harrison Ford. We regret the misunderstanding and appreciate his contribution to the show. But that word, misunderstanding, did little to cool the fire. Across the country, headlines kept spinning. Joy Behar under fire after Harrison Ford walkout. Fans demand apology. Inside the day, The View lost its cool. Clips of the moment continued to dominate feeds. The camera angle of Harrison standing up, calm, collected, that single devastating line, "You call it fun. I call it disrespect," had become iconic. People were making edits of it, remixes, even slow-motion analysis videos breaking down the exact second Joy's smirk faded. Harrison Ford, meanwhile, had gone completely silent. No interviews. No red carpets. No public appearances. Just silence. And in that silence, his presence somehow grew louder. He didn't need to speak. His restraint had become the story. Inside The View's offices, Joy sat in a closed-door meeting with executives. The tension was thick. Ratings were up, yes, but the backlash was unrelenting. "We need to get ahead of this," one executive said firmly. "It's turning into a PR nightmare. You've been through controversies before, Joy, but this one's not dying down. It's Harrison Ford. People love him." Joy folded her arms, her expression tired. "So what do you want me to do? Grovel on camera?" "No," the executive said carefully. "We want sincerity. You don't have to grovel. You just have to be human." That word lingered in the air. The next morning, Joy arrived early to the studio. The halls were unusually quiet. She passed Whoopi in the dressing room, who gave her a small nod. Not approval, not sympathy, just quiet acknowledgement. When the red light above the camera blinked on, Joy looked into it differently this time. The sparkle of mischief was gone. Her tone was lower, measured. "You know," she began, "I've been doing this show a long time. And in that time, I've said a lot of things. Some people love me for it, some people don't. But last week, something happened that made me stop and think." The audience went silent. "I had a moment with Harrison Ford that didn't go the way I expected," she continued. "I made a joke. He didn't find it funny. And looking back, I get it. Sometimes, when you do this job long enough, you forget how your words can hit someone on the other side of the table." She paused, her hands clasped together on the desk. "So, I just want to say, to Harrison and to anyone watching who thought I crossed a line, I hear you. I respect you. And I'll do better." There was no applause this time. Just quiet. And in that quiet, something real lingered. Whoopi gave her a small nod, a faint smile. It wasn't approval, it was recognition of honesty. After the show, the clip went viral again, but for different reasons. People called it the rarest thing on TV, a genuine moment. Some fans praised her for owning up. Others still criticized her, saying it was too late. But at least now the narrative was shifting. Meanwhile, Harrison Ford was on his ranch in Wyoming, far from the noise. He hadn't watched the apology live, but someone had sent it to him. He sat at the kitchen table, coffee in hand, watching Joy speak on his tablet. There was no visible reaction on his face, but when she said, "I hear you. I respect you," he let out a quiet exhale. After a long pause, he closed the tablet and muttered to himself, "Good." His publicist asked later if he wanted to respond, to close the loop. Harrison simply shook his head. "No need," he said. "It's over." But to the public, it wasn't over. It became legend. The day Harrison Ford, a man of few words, walked off The View and made daytime television history. Fans continued to debate it online for weeks. Comment sections filled with theories, emotions, and reflections. Some praised his composure, Others criticized Joy's sarcasm. But everyone agreed it was one of the most unforgettable moments in recent TV memory. And in the chaos, something remarkable happened. The View's next few episodes hit record-breaking numbers. People tuned in not just for the gossip, but to see how Joy carried herself. And she did change. Her tone softened. She interrupted less. She listened more. One viewer tweeted, "Maybe Harrison Ford did what no one else could. He reminded her to respect the seat." Months later, in an interview promoting another project, a journalist cautiously brought up the View incident with Harrison. "Do you regret walking off?" they asked. He smiled faintly. "No," he said. "Sometimes walking away says more than arguing ever could." That clip alone reignited the story one last time. People flooded the comments with respect for him, for his calm strength, for his unwillingness to play the media's game. And Joy, she watched that interview, sitting quietly in her dressing room again. There was no bitterness this time, only reflection. She smiled slightly and whispered to herself, "Fair enough, Harrison." The camera of public attention moved on eventually, as it always does. But those few minutes on The View, that electric, unfiltered clash, stayed burned into pop culture's memory. It became a reminder of something simple, something powerful. That respect still matters, even when the cameras are rolling. And for those who saw it unfold, it was more than television. It was truth breaking through the noise. If you were watching that day, or if you're just hearing this story now, what do you think? Was Harrison Ford right to walk off? Or was Joy Behar just doing her job? Let us know in the comments below, because we want to hear your take. And if you love these real, dramatic moments where Hollywood meets raw emotion, make sure you subscribe to Talk Narrative for more explosive confrontations, unforgettable interviews, and the stories behind the headlines. Because sometimes the truth doesn't need a script, it just needs a moment.